Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started, and what are they doing to stay there? And oh my goodness, you are in for a treat today because I have another special guest. Today, I'm getting to talk to Kelli Valade. Kelli is the Chief Executive Officer at Denny's Corporation. And Kelli, I'm so excited to have you on the show. How you doing?
I'm great. I am thrilled to be here, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
I have had you on my list to get you on the show for quite some time. And so I'm so excited to have you on the show. I always like to start the show by just kind of going back to when I met my guests or when they came into my path. And for you, I want to ask you if you remember this. I was attending Sean Self's Meeting of the Minds event. You came in, I want to say this was over 10 years ago, but you came in and you just gave some data. And I was just so impressed. And then we met in one of the breakout sessions. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I remember meeting you then, and we have mutual friend in Tony Bridwell. So I absolutely remember that. I think I just left Brinker International. I had been with Brinker for 22 years, just left. And at that time I was the CEO of Black Box Intelligence, which is probably where you remember the data coming in, because we were the best data provider in many ways for the restaurant industry at Black Box Intelligence.
That's right. Oh my goodness, that was so fantastic. I just remember how impressed I was. And speaking of Tony Bridwell, of course, he's been a former guest. I've had several Brinker team members, executives today. Diane Sanford, who has been a former guest, Mandy Monk, Roseanne Garza. I mean, probably more. So, hey, I want to kick this off. Denny's Corporation. I would love for you to share a brief highlight of Denny's and how you serve your customers.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm really proud to be here almost a year now, which is crazy because it feels like it literally was just yesterday that I did join this fantastic corporation. So Denny's Corporation now is the proud parent of two brands. So Denny's, the flagship brand that everyone knows and loves and is an iconic brand, of course. That brand is now 70 years young. So we celebrate our 70th anniversary. It started in 1953 with a Danny's donut shop, Danny's coffee shop, and that started in California. And here we are 70 years later. It started with a young man named Harold Butler who had a purpose, and he was really clear about the purpose. And when we went back to ask him years later, why'd you start a brand like Danny's Donuts, Danny's coffee shop, and why'd you open 24/7? And he said, because I love to feed people. So the Denny's brand is about our love to feed people. And we have added over the years bodies, minds, and souls. And I'm incredibly proud of that, because we actually, for every one of those kind of pillars, bodies, minds, and souls, we have incredible things that we do for our team members, for our guests, for our franchisees, as it relates to just that passion for feeding others. So purpose-driven brands, 70 years young, lots of potential ahead. There's just so many great things that we will hopefully get to talk about. But we also acquired Kiki's Breakfast Cafe this last year. And so we acquired that last summer, and we are in the process of establishing kind of two separate and distinct brand leadership teams. And we are laying the foundation for pretty massive growth with the Kiki's brand. It operates in that kind of daytime eatery segments. It's only open 7.5 hours, so very different than the Denny's brand. But it's an exciting opportunity for this corporation, because we are a model franchisor, we like to say. So we're taking our what we know about being a great franchisor and applying it to this very small 55 unit breakfast chain that started in Florida. So big things ahead for that, massive growth ahead.
I love that. Well, happy birthday, Denny's.
Yeah, thank you.
How exciting. Anytime you have an acquisition, I know anytime our company has another acquisition, we always get excited because now all of a sudden we have more to offer.
Yeah,
Others.
absolutely.
And so that's fantastic. And we're definitely going to talk about purpose. I love that. Man, when I hear purpose driven, I mean, it just feels good to be part of that. And I definitely want to get into that. But before we do that, I would love to hear the Kelli Valade story. Like, where did you grow up? And how in the world did you get into leadership and where you are today?
Thank you. I'd love to share that. I grew up in upstate New York, Syracuse, New York, to be specific. And I grew up in a really small town and got my first job at 16 in the restaurant business. And it was at a TJ's Big Boy. So ironically, I talk about now this part of my journey of being at Denny's is really coming full circle, right? Really coming full circle, starting at a diner, if you will, at a TJ's Big Boy, starting at a restaurant that had counter service. I learned immediately the meaning of, what restaurants could really provide and the meaning behind that, because I'd watch people come in, people, by the way, that I still remember their names to this day. I remember what they drank, what they ate when they came in to at that counter in particular, everybody, but that counter in particular, because it was about being seen. And I've spent my entire career focused on the power of being seen, and things that can unfold when you see your purpose that way, or when you lean into what restaurants really can do. It's yes about food and sustenance, but it's actually about being seen and connecting, the joy of kind of connecting around a table. I'm Italian, we say breaking bread, it is that's a really meaningful, big deal. And every dish, every meal is about love and bringing people together. And I learned that just both at home and then in my first experience. So started at TJ's Big Boy, have never looked back. I have always been in restaurants. I went on to get my MBA. And even when I was doing that, I was still working in a restaurant, still working on the weekends. I had people in that first job at that Big Boy that actually said, here, let us help you. You could be a trainer, you could be a manager. What do you want to do? And I had somebody that, people that saw something in me that tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, let's give you these skills, right? Let's give you these opportunities. So I'm going to graduate school. I'm working on my degree. They helped me figure out how to apply for student loans. So it went way beyond just first bosses and what they did for me. It kind of shaped what I would do from that point on. And I think that's the other thing that's incredibly powerful about restaurants. So I finished finished graduate school, went on to work for a really small consulting firm that was working with restaurants. Got excited about doing that. Moved to Dallas. Did that for a couple of years. That company later became Black Box Intelligence. So again, a bit of a full circle. There's connections I made really early on that still to this day, those people are in my life as mentors or as family. So there's some commonalities there in terms of my career and how it's been influenced by some very important people. I spent 22 years with Brinker. I went to Brinker International soon after moving to Dallas. And I was in a lot of different positions. HR for the first half of my career, I worked in about every position in human resources, doing rotations, taking on different assignments, and leading HR at the highest level, at senior vice president level at the Chili's brand at one point, and then was asked to become the chief operating officer. Inflection point, turning point in only the best way. That happened to be in like 2009. Became the chief operating officer, then the brand president, and after 22 years, and an amazing 22 years, I moved on to take a CEO job at Black Box, and then later here at Denny's. So
Wow.
that's the abbreviated version of my career.
What a journey. What a journey. I love how you share the story about TJ Big Boys and the counter. Like that's like you go back there and you can like just feel it. I'm just sitting here. I feel like I'm sitting at the counter with you right now. It's interesting how people make impact on our journey. I would love to dive in just for a few minutes and talk about mentors that have helped you along the way, because you mentioned that it goes way beyond, right? You were talking about investment in your career. Talk a little bit about mentors and how important that is for you to have a mentor.
Yeah, Bruce, so important to have a mentor. And I like to say I have my own kind of personal board of directors.
Okay.
So I like to say that I have many people that I've come into contact in my life that have become, like I said, family. And they're not just, so I think mentors can be time bound. You can have some mentors where it's very formalized, and that could be a 6-month assignment. Maybe you're together for a year. The mentors I've had have been kind of lifelong mentors. One of the first women I worked for, one of the first bosses I had out of graduate school was a woman named Roz Mallett. Roz Mallett is family to me. She has been in operations. She was an HR executive with companies like TGI Fridays, Caribou Coffee. She now has her own business and is a franchisee rather, of many different restaurant concepts. She's somebody that has guided my career for almost 30 years. And then as I move kind of throughout and have had different positions, as I mentioned, different winds, this windy path of mine, right? Different turns on that journey. There just been different people that were incredibly meaningful to me, and people that I would know on that personal board of directors who I could lean into for this, who'd give me kind of the tough love speech if I needed it, who'd kind of lift me up if I needed it. And staying in contact with those has really been incredibly special to me. John Miller was someone.
Mm.
So John Miller is the former CEO here at the Denny's Corporation, an amazing leader, responsible for so much of the kind of purpose-driven work that that was done as of late with the Denny's brand. He was somebody I met when I was 26 years old at Brinker International. And at the level I came in, he was the president of the brand, but he saw me, right?
Mm.
About being seen. He saw me,
Mm.
and I felt incredibly valued and appreciated working under a leader like that. And we remained friends. I considered him to be a dear friend and a mentor for 25 years. I've got those people in my life that just have helped me, guided me. I like to say I listen to feedback. I like to say
Mm.
it's really important not to filter feedback and have those people around you that can kind of serve you in that way, but also be brutally honest with you when you need it.
Mm. That hurts sometimes,
It
but
can.
it helps us grow, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
Oh
why you
my.
balance it out. Some tough love with somebody that'll lift you up when you need it
Mm.
too, right? You just have to kind of know enough about yourself to know what you need sometimes.
I have chills. I got to tell you, if you're listening right now, you need to have your pen, you need to have your journal, take some notes here. There's a lot of good stuff here. I love how you talked about Roz, how not just she mentored you then, it's like she's continued to guide you, like
Yeah.
continue, like that's, and the personal board of directors, I've heard that before. And I think that's important. And the reason why I want to kind of retouch on that is just because there's people listening right now. And I'm like, you need to have
Mhm.
people in your purposeful, right? Purposeful people in your life to help guide you along the way. I do want to talk about purpose. And because I always talk about, I wrote a book several years ago called Find Your Lane. And that's really about like finding like your calling.
Mhm.
And you talked about, yeah, 16, man, I was, you had this great experience and you just kept moving on. But there was probably a moment in your career where you said, you know what, this is what I love to do, and I'm going to continue to do it. Was there a moment, or maybe there's been several moments?
Yes, and probably many, right? But probably many. There were moments when I said, "Is this the path?" Operations,
Mm.
right? Because I started at 16, and by
Mm.
20, I was actually a general manager of one of the restaurants. It was an independent family of restaurants, and I was a general manager for them. Again, they afforded me the opportunity to go back and forth, handle my school load, and work on the weekends and pull management shifts. So I was in management at that point. So one of the turning points was I know I love this business, but
Mm.
maybe I could get in on the other side. Maybe I could get in on the HR side. Maybe I could do something on the corporate side. So turning point being able to get into a corporate position supporting HR and supporting restaurants. So there's never a doubt about restaurants. It was which path.
Mm.
And obviously I moved from ops early on to HR and then back to ops. So again, never a question of restaurants, but which path. And it just kept being reaffirmed for me that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Even working for and running Black Box Intelligence was an amazing journey there. In the time I was with Black Box Intelligence, I was supporting restaurants. I was reporting on what I was seeing happen in restaurants. I was reporting on it during the pandemic, by the way,
Mm.
which was just an incredible time for so many. But for
Mm.
me, I felt like I was reporting, but on the sidelines. I wasn't running a brand. I wasn't
Mm.
working side by side. I wasn't working a to-go window where it was almost like survivor guilt at one point. But I realized through that and working with other CEOs and working across the industry that I wanted to be back in and leading a team, that my life's
Mm.
work really was leading a brand and working with teams to move brands forward and to really unlock the full potential of brands. I'm kind of a geek that way in terms of being a student of just great brands and what they can do when you kind of unlock that potential and unlock the people within that as well.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, I want to, you mentioned a couple of times, be seen. Like those, I wrote down those two words, be seen. It's so important. Like for people listening, like, I don't know, maybe what's a tip you would say that helped you, or you see it helps others be seen in the workplace?
It's deeply rooted in a belief I have that the more vulnerable and the more you share, the
Mm.
more you will find these connection points with others and find an opportunity to say, I see you. So it's a bit about, and I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, but it's a bit about the courage. Vulnerability is she says, the courage to be seen. I agree. And so I think when you share and show the courage to be seen yourself, you give others the opportunity to connect. Making that connection then becomes easy to say, yes, I see you too. And I learned that at a pretty young age. It took me a while. because there's this, I think, especially for women, sometimes there's this thought of, do I have to look like I have the answers? Do I have to make sure to show up as if I'm supposed to be here? Or maybe, and it's okay to be transparent and to be vulnerable. I would show up at every, every interaction, whether in the restaurants or on a stage, and I would talk about my personal life. I would talk about the fact that I'm a mom. I would talk about struggles at times being a woman and being in a position where I had to make trade-offs. People would often ask me about, can you talk to us about work-life balance? I would say, yeah, I see it as work-life choices, and those choices are really difficult to make. So I would take those opportunities. So advice I would give is, first, allow yourself to be seen, because that will open up so many doors. And then think about ways to connect with others in a meaningful way, feeling like you are there to do more than just lead or influence a conversation or guide people towards a common goal. That's leaders. Basic leadership is about that. It's about, can I guide? Can I influence? Can I move people towards a common goal collectively? I think meaningful leadership, purposeful leadership, is about guiding them in a way that shows care, that shows clarity, that allows them to be seen and drives them towards something bigger than themselves.
I love that. I love all that. I will tell you, I wrote down, share your story.
Mhm.
I think that a lot of times I don't know. Yes, it's about vulnerability. It's about, hey, I'm not sure I should share this, but you got to go back to, well, who are you serving?
Right.
Right? Sharing that story, right? I noticed you recently posted something around mental health and you said, hey, I'm going to start sharing my story. And I thought that was interesting. That caught my attention because now all of a sudden I'm like, I want to hear that. That's what
Yeah.
I want to know, right?
Right. Sure. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so good. Oh my goodness. I will tell you, when I on social, whether it's in the workplace, in the halls, or on social media, when I post something around, I don't know, let's moving boxes, or we're moving, it's, you get a little bit of interaction. But when you start posting things around your life, how you
Sure.
have overcome challenges or how you've seen this, all of a sudden you get great engagement. And that works that way in the workplace too, right?
It does. It absolutely does. It absolutely does. It gives people a connection point. And I've also learned that it helps when people say, "Oh, you're dealing with that too?"
Mm.
And so then therefore, like, so I'm not only normal, I'm struggling with the same thing. So it helps you just to be real. And I don't know, any other way to be.
And I'm so glad you shared that, because I think a lot of times people will see you, or they'll see successful people and they just see the tip of the iceberg. Like they've always been
That's right.
successful. Everything's great in their lives. Everything's
Yeah.
going well. And they don't realize, you know what? They're going through some of the same struggles you're going through, right?
Everybody is. Everybody has a story.
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, so you mentioned you have been in the role now for a year now. And by the way, preparing for this interview, I just got to say, this week I stopped by our local in Corinth, Texas, Denny's restaurant, and had the double berry banana pancake breakfast. And it was phenomenal.
That's awesome.
Just
Yeah.
saying. And we're going to talk about the employee experience, but I also had a coffee cup. I recently posted this on social, and it said Rome wasn't built in a day, but what if they had coffee? And I thought to
Mhm.
myself, it wasn't just a white cup. It was like, it's like it
Yes.
gave me a different experience. I thought that was really cool.
Yes.
Talk a little
Mhm.
bit about, how do you where is your focus? What do you do when you first come into an organization?
So for me, it was about the first three, really 6 months, was about getting out into the restaurants, meeting a lot of our teams, meeting a lot of our employees. We own 65 of the over 1,600 restaurants. So we own a small portion of those restaurants, but those restaurants are critical to our business in terms that that's the way we showcase new ideas. That's the way we pilot new things to kind of prove out a business case and an ROI. So visiting those restaurants was critical. Meeting all of our franchisees. We have 219 franchisees. So
Mm,
we have a lot of franchisees. There are a lot of people that they have, my story may be my story at 16, starting in a TJ's Big Boy as a hostess, very similar to a lot of stories out there. Not nearly as fascinating and as beautiful as some of the people that I have met here that are franchisees of Denny's, right? So we have incredibly diverse franchise base. It's talk about life's work and their
mm.
livelihood, and starting with sometimes nothing, and moving to this country and then finding a way into a business like a Denny. So there's amazing stories. And for me, it's about understanding the heritage, understanding the purpose of the brand, understanding the opportunity and the potential, asking questions, a lot of questions, kept a journal for months, just asking a lot of questions. What should I know? What's worked well? What's sacred? What should I never try and change? What should I immediately try and change, so that others are helping you with the priorities? It's not just, again, same playbook. So I'm really excited about the progress we've made in a lot of areas. Again, setting up the Kiki's brand, it was brand new. The transaction happened after I started. So we've made tremendous progress in setting up that team, doing a lot of brand ethos work on that Kiki's team to help understand how we grow this thing successfully. On the Denny's brand, outside of the 70th anniversary I mentioned, we launched a new campaign. That cup you just referred to is kind of part of that campaign, and part of, we call the new campaign's called It's Diner Time. And it's about this idea that Denny's is America's diner. We like to say we're America's diner for today's America. And we've got this incredibly positive halo on being a diner and the nostalgia of a diner. But it also sets us apart from other family diners and others that serve breakfast. And so for us, the diner time mentality was about the comfort of a diner, the nostalgia of it, but the comfort of a diner, the reliability of a diner. And I think there's no better time for that, by the way, because of the conversations post-pandemic and the fact that people want to be back in restaurants, surrounded by family and friends. So launched a new campaign. We've launched new food. We've finished kitchen modernization program that had been in the works for 3 years. We concluded that, and again, have innovation in food that we've launched as a result. We launched our mental health summits, and then we're leaning further into mental health benefits and really trying to lead in the industry around mental health benefits, so that our people have something different and far and away a bit stronger than just an EAP, right? Just the typical employee assistance program, also tied to kind of what we've been through in the pandemic. We've opened more 24/7 restaurants. So coming out of this was also a kind of level setting year post-pandemic. So you had to come in with this assignment being really patient about what does everybody need and how are they? Because you talk about everybody being in a different place. The pandemic did not discriminate, but it left people in different places, right? And so this is the year, 2023, I think, is the year that will be cleaner, less noise, and it really does have a very positive halo, given how much we're seeing people, come back to normal behaviors and expectations for restaurants, but also food costs coming down, labor costs starting to come down a little bit. So there's lots of exciting things that we've got going on, and lots more to come in the way of kind of new food and some great LTOs on the horizon, and just learning more about our guests and helping our franchisees every day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love how you talk about, you get out there and you see the people and all the different exciting things going on. I would like to talk a little bit about the team member experience. It's a top priority, right? I mean, I think I heard the customer experience never exceeds the employee experience, right? We've heard that. Talk a little bit about the importance of that. Do you talk about that in the boardroom, and how do you create that to where employees feel like they're part of something bigger?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question. You mentioned, how do you talk about in the boardroom? One of the reasons I joined this brand was because I knew, having met the board of directors and having met, the people that I would be working with on my board, and knew how important it was to them. So I'd say they're unique, they're different. It's not like that everywhere. And I am incredibly blessed and lucky to be working with the board I have. We have 58% of our board are people of color, and 40% women. So unheard of, and best in class in the restaurant industry, along with, like I said, our metrics for franchisees and the diversity of our franchisees. So we've got it at every level. And that board pushes me every day, but they lean into people, and lean into our purpose. When I joined, one of the things they said was, there's so much potential in this brand. We want a seamless, as the most seamless as possible transition, from John Miller to you. They were so careful and so cautious about how we would go about that together in taking care of the teams, right? So I could sense it immediately when thinking about joining this brand. So you mentioned, the customer experience will never exceed the employee experience. I firmly believe that. And then again, we're a franchise system, so we've got lots of different owners. So our goal is always to lead with the best possible, programs and tools and culture systems in place. And we've got it in so many ways. So whether it's our turnover is leading the not just the family dining segment, but all of full service right now, that's in our company restaurants. That's where we can track it. So we're leading in turnover at the management level, at the hourly level. We're seeing that retention play out in terms of the best guest satisfaction scores that we've had ever.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
it is fantastic. And so we're just building that case for here's what happens when you take care of the guests, right? And then we're watching obviously sales and profits as well. So always about people first, but then the service profit chain would say the results will come. Those are leading indicators. So thrilled about the things we're doing there. We're about to announce, and so this may be just hot off the press, but our game,
I love it. Live in the leadership lane, hot off the press news now.
yes, a program called Gain. So our Gain is about gaining skills, education, opportunities, and Gain has different elements to it. But one of them is we are now going to, and I've just got one college in particular we're working with, but the goal is to work with many others on getting college credits for our MIT program. So we're working on that, and had the first school just say yes to our proposal on that. So you finish our MIT program, you've got college credits coming to you. The other thing we're doing is working with a coach. We will assign coaches to anybody anywhere in our organization that wants to get a GED. And so because we know, who starts in this industry and how people start at 16, like I did, we know that education can unlock so many other things for people. And we're leaning into education in a really big way with our programs. We already have best in class programs on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we'll continue to lean into that. Mental health, to me, just one more way of thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, right? It's about health equity, and it's about being whole, happy, seeing the whole person, right? So many good programs here that people probably wouldn't assume about us. And I think it's part of what I feel like I'm supposed to do in terms of just telling people there's really good stuff here.
This is great stuff. I want to ask you, as you're sharing that, I do a lot of speaking, and a couple of things that get brought up, and even for franchisees, this would play into role. And a couple of questions are around feeling a sense of belonging to something bigger. Number one, and number two, being re-energized. I feel like those two are like two hot topics that I hear from HR leaders that are saying, hey, Bruce, come in and talk about it. I would love for you to talk about, number one, how do you, like, I think some of the things you've talked about here, like they're energizing, but re-energize people in that setting and give them that sense of belonging.
Well, again, the programs are in place in such a big way. It's in such a foundational way here. The program that we have that really does literally lean into a sense of belonging for all is called Denny's Together. And it's the best of what we have related to diversity, equity, inclusion, but it's also about, again, seeing each other and creating that sense of belonging. It's about, we have know, grow, and connect. And that's about having our programs doing all three of those things, help you know, help you grow, but help you connect. So it's woven into, honestly, some of this stuff has been here for years, and some of it is being reintroduced as we speak, or we double down on it in our conversations. I can tell you a great example. Yesterday, we started talking about revisiting our guiding principles, which are our values, but they're phrased as guiding principles. And we actually had a community lunch yesterday to celebrate Cinco de Mayo on Friday. We had it on a Wednesday. We often get together in we have kind of a restaurant called the Den downstairs in our office here. We brought everybody together to break bread, have lunch, celebrate Cinco de Mayo. But on the tables were conversation starters about our guiding principles. And it was things like, so we were intentional. We had a support center meeting. We told everybody what we were going to do over lunch together. And then I personally walked around every table and asked a question that was on the conversation starters, right? Because if I don't role model it and show that I care deeply about these guiding principles, not just being words on paper, but truly coming to life, then no one else will. So ways to reintroduce things, ways to reinvigorate people. You just remind them what's already there sometimes. Or every time you launch something new, mental health, you remind them of why and why it ties back to the purpose. And I think that makes a big difference for people.
I was at a SHRM National Conference last year, and I got to hear President George W. Bush speak. And one of the things they asked him about, why do you, read history books? And he said, because time dulls the memory. Yeah. And as you share that, I'm like, we've had these. We just got to keep telling the story.
That's right.
We got to keep sharing why that matters, right?
Yeah,
I love that. The den.
absolutely. The den. Yes. Yes.
That's fantastic. I love it. Hey, let me ask you this. You're very driven. As a matter of fact, I was reading one of the things I enjoy about interviewing a guest is I start doing some research, and I saw like 10 years ago, you were like given an award for like Dallas Business Journal. I think it was Women to Watch.
Mhm.
And so you're very driven. What drives you?
That's a great question. What drives me? I like winning.
Mm,
I played sports as in my youth, and I do like winning. So I've got a competitive spirit, and bringing people together around
mm,
something again that's meaningful.
yeah.
Seeing those things kind of move towards the goal that you've created together, taking ideas that are not just yours, but ideas that come from others. So it's like this kind of mosaic for me. And I get really excited about hoping that I can leave it better than I found it. Right. So, and it's an awesome and really big responsibility to do this. But at its simplest way of thinking about it is just trying to leave it better than I found it. But I'm driven by that. Along the way, somewhere in my career, figured out that this is what really energized me. And
Mm,
it's the people that I work with, and it's the team around me that teaches me every single day. So
I love that.
I think that's what it is.
I
Yeah.
love that. Hey, what sports did you play?
I played softball, a little bit of basketball, a little bit of volleyball, but softball was my sport.
Softball.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Hey, let me ask you just a couple more questions real quick. One of the things I don't know, it seems like when I go to a conference, I'll see a topic. What keeps HR up at night, or what keeps leaders up at night? Anything that you think about, like that, I don't know, maybe not keeps you up, but you think about often?
Sure, there's lots that keeps me up. Hard not to after what we've all been through the last 3 years, and just hoping that again we get some normalcy. We get a little back that we lost in these last 3 years.
Yeah.
But I think about ways to drive traffic, ways to keep the Denny's brand relevant and up to date and positive in people's mind. I think about just the responsibility for all the people around working towards this this goal. I think about all of our franchisees and the responsibility there. It is again their life. It's not just their life's work; it's their livelihood, right?
Mm,
For them, it's a completely different thing, and you have to keep that in perspective. That have multiple stakeholders and multiple people kind of relying on what we're doing here, and our management team is doing. But for them, it is their family business. It is everything. So keeping that into perspective in terms of what it means for them is really what I lay in bed thinking about sometimes.
yeah. Hey, let me ask you this question. For those, I don't know, for those listening, as we kind of round out this conversation, that I don't know, they want to continue growing. They want to be, maybe they want to be a director, or maybe want to be a franchise owner, or maybe they want to be in the corporate office, a better, leader. What are, I don't know, give a couple of tips.
Mhm.
We talked about professional development. Give a couple of tips what people and maybe you also share like what do you expect from and maybe this information I guess is for people on your team. Like what are some things that they can do to just keep on growing in the
Sure.
organization to possibly be promoted to another position?
Sure. So I'm a big fan. It's the HR, recovering HR person to me, a big fan of just development, whatever
Mm,
that looks like, just
yeah.
whatever that looks like. And I think about it in terms of all the elements of well-being, not just career, but what does that look like to help people be more whole? Advice I'd give, raise your hand. It's not always easy to do. Don't question if you think you can add something to either a conversation, a project, an assignment, raise your hand, whether it's in your lane or not, whether it's straight up something. So when I was in HR, there were lots of cross-functional assignments. Brinker International had 9 brands at one point. So I was on one brand team, but there was a chance to play on a project for the enterprise. I would raise my hand and say, I think I can add value there.
Mm,
Just quite simply, I think I can add value there. And then over time, I got to be someone that would be called on to take on a different assignment, maybe clean something up, maybe turn something around, or maybe establish a new way of doing something. I centralized recruiting at one point. I decentralized it 6 years later at the same company. But just taking on different assignments and saying, "Hey, I'm willing to work hard and do that." That's one because we don't always do that, or we might see. I don't know who's going to solve that, but people don't always raise their hand. I think listen to feedback. If you don't have a book on emotional intelligence, buy a book on emotional intelligence and think about what your emotional intelligence is and your capacity for really accepting, internalizing, and reacting to feedback. Uh,
Mm,
I think a lot of times people will say, that was good feedback, I guess, but that's not really how it applies. Or, well, there was a reason I did that. So I accept the feedback, but there's a reason I did that. And no one owns, accepting, internalizing, changing based on the feedback more than you do. You own that. And male, female, doesn't matter if a male acts differently about something and a woman gets that same feedback. Is the feedback valid? All feedback is valid and priceless. So that's, I think, a really key piece of advice that has helped me,
mhm.
is to not filter feedback and not assume great intentions in it, and then think about where you could be better for hearing that feedback.
I love how you said raise your hand. And by the way, I want to just dive real quick. Raising your hand sometimes isn't easy to do either because you don't feel like, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm a young manager or in this position, and now you're connecting with upper leadership.
Right.
I don't know what should people think about like raising your hand? Like how hard that was that for you early, and how did you get better at it?
Right. That's a great question. I'm not sure how I got better at it, or when I did it the first time even. But I do know that became a pattern through my career in terms of maybe being pleasantly surprised at first and saying, well, if you want, I can take, I can take a stab at this. And then learning that if you don't raise your hand, you may not be called on. And then just kind of getting, at that point, got this reputation for being a bit scrappy and being somebody that was flexible enough to, have different assignments. Can't remember the first time. I do know I was probably doing it at a pretty young age.
And then if you do raise your hand and they say, "Hey, not yet," you do it again, right? For
That's
the
right.
next time, hey, you do it again until you get that opportunity, right?
Mhm. And in the meantime, you try and influence what might be happening, even if the
Mm.
answer was no, right? In a respectful way, in a way that, manages and navigates the culture you're in, be mindful of the culture you're in. So you do it in a way that is in line with that culture, then people will still notice.
Which correlates to being seen.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love that. Oh my goodness, this has been so good. I appreciate you so much. I do like to end kind of before I shift to it's time to accelerate. I do like to ask this question because you've given a lot of great advice today. But was there ever any advice that you were given on your journey, maybe as early in your career or middle career, late career? It's just so good. You just find yourself sharing that with others.
Yeah, that's a great question, Bruce. I go back to so many great pieces of advice. Patience, grasshopper is one I always think about because I don't have a lot of patience. So I have to tell myself to slow down
Mm,
sometimes. And that has always been the case for me. Like there are whether mentors, family, that's always been the case for me. It's just to be patient. Sometimes let things come. But I remember at a pretty young age rolling out a new MIT training program and standing up in front of all of my operators at that my customers at that time, and wasn't getting the exact reaction I was hoping to get. Was getting frustrated, visibly frustrated at the engagement from the room, and look at the work we put into this, and we had done everything we were supposed to. We had aligned, we had gotten people involved, and one of the operators came to me. He was an area director, and he came up to me. His name is, I remember it to this day. He said, "Just because it is the number one thing on your list doesn't mean it's the number one thing on mine. And it
mm,
also doesn't mean I don't care about it." And so I remember then thinking perspective, right? Perspective, know what, just kind of, we talked about it earlier, what people are going through, what else they may be dealing with. Put yourself in their shoes. And for me, it's the perfect example now working with franchisees, right? Know where they are in their business, know what matters to them. For us as a publicly held company, it's, I worry about and think about stock price and think about shareholder returns, as I should. But franchisees, it's cash, and it's, again, their livelihood, and it's profitability, and it's growing sales and traffic as well. So just knowing that what they look at may be slightly different than what we look at, both are really important, and you have to kind of understand that perspective.
That's fantastic perspective. And it all goes back to listening and feedback and all the things that we've talked about today. This has been so good. Oh my goodness. I told you the time was going to fly.
It
I've
did
got,
fly.
yes, I've got a few questions to we'll go to. It's time to accelerate. First question I'd like to ask, especially for you, like with your time, would you rather read a book or listen to an Audible or a podcast?
Probably podcast given the time. So time on planes, download things before I get on a plane. I'm okay when I work out trying to listen to a podcast here and there, although sometimes music dominates and I just can't
Mm,
get there. So podcast easier, but good books are for me, sometimes a good book is literally something you talk about reinvigorating or reminding yourself.
yeah.
Sometimes there's those same 4 books on my desk that I go back to, or on my nightstand that I go back to for thoughts, or a quote in my next speech, or something that kind of grounds me. So books are still a really key part of kind of how I think and learn and remind myself of what's important too.
Hey, I always talk about great leaders. They're grateful leaders. What are you grateful for?
Ugh. You know, if you had asked me at 16, taking a hostess job, that I would ever be able to do what I'm doing today, I would not have believed you. And I am every day humbled, honored, grateful, beyond grateful, just humbled and honored to do what I get to do. So I'm grateful for my family first and foremost. But I'm also now grateful I'm a part of an organization that values family in the way
Mm,
that I do, and wants to create that, again, before I got here, wanted that kind of environment to be, be what we have here. So I'm grateful for a lot of things, but those 2 primarily.
yeah, that's fantastic. It feels good to be part of an organization that has that family atmosphere. I'm fortunate to have that as well. Hey, you talked earlier about being energized by your team and development and some of those things outside of the workplace. What energizes you? What do you like to do?
Well, I like to cook. I do a
Mm,
lot of cooking when I'm not at work. I do cook a lot of Italian food. In fact, my team and I, we're going to start on this journey of either having some kind of meatball competition or cooking together. Because I think when you do things that are not totally related to work, but create different experiences that kind of open
mm,
yourself up, and that's one of them that we're going to do soon. But so I cook a lot. I cook Italian food when I can. Spend a lot of time with my family when I can. I love yoga. So when I can, a good weekend is yoga, and great work, a lot of time to work out and reflect on things, but be with my family, maybe around the kitchen cooking.
yeah, love it, love it. Oh my goodness. Okay, so last question, probably my favorite question, Kelly. I like to ask is Kelly 10 years older is knocking at your door. And you're going to go answer that door. What's she
Mm.
going to tell you?
She's gonna say you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Mm, that's so good. That's a very wise 10 years older Kelly Valade. It has
I hope
been
so.
an honor to have you on the show today. I'm so grateful. Somebody heard something from you, share something today, or that they want to follow you. Is there a way they could connect with you on social?
Sure, absolutely. Kelly Valade, on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, active on LinkedIn. My handle on Twitter is KV Palooza. That's an old story, but that's my handle on Twitter. I'm on Instagram on and off, mostly because my daughter is, but those are probably the 2 best ways to connect.
I will put that in the show notes. I'm so grateful to have you on the show today and just hear your perspective and share your wisdom with others. I know that people listening are going to get a lot out of this. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate you and your friendship. And I cannot wait to see your organization and where you go.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been an honor to be here. I appreciate you very much. It was fun, and it was fun.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Take care.